Hi everyone, it's Dr. Sarah Moore here, and this morning I have the pleasure of speaking with one of my friends and colleagues, Dr. Hilton Koppe. Hilton is a GP, an educator, a writer, a workshop facilitator, a speaker, and also an international soccer player. So welcome, Hilton.
Thanks, Sarah.
So Hilton, look, we met a few years ago at a Rural Health West conference over here in Western Australia, and I think that was a really a lovely meeting because it's led to us organising some workshops together, and I guess just becoming friends, which has been a really lovely journey. And I thought today it would be lovely to speak a little bit about what you spoke about at that conference, which was work-life balance. So I thought we could start off if you could give us a definition or your definition of work-life balance.
Yeah, good question to start off with, Sarah. So the thing about work-life balance, people talk about it a lot, but it's a term that I don't particularly like because it sort of gives this artificial impression that on the one hand there's work and on the other hand there's life. So the way that I tend to look at it is that it's all life. So it's about life balance or having a balanced life. So that'd be the first thing. And so what I've tried to do is to think about how can I best integrate my values and beliefs in thinking about what sort of work I do and importantly, how much work I do.
Yes.
So how much time I spend. So both the nature of the work and the amount of time.
Yes. Excellent.
What you may have noticed in medicine is that the demand is endless, and it doesn't matter whether it's direct patient care or thinking about education or doing the things that you're doing now. The demand is endless.
Yes.
So I could do that 24/7 and be doing what I value, what's important to me for work, but then I would be neglecting something else. So it's about thinking about those two things, what's congruent with my values, but also the amount of time.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, Hilton. So I guess leading on from that, obviously something that you really enjoy doing is writing. So can you talk a little bit about how you discovered this passion of yours and how you find time for that in your life and help it and how does it help you create balance?
Yeah. So I've always liked reading, so that's always a good start as an introduction to writing. Most writers like reading as well. And then about 15 years ago, a patient of mine who I thought I'd really helped with a complex mental health issue wrote a poem about her experience of my medical care. And to say that the poem was not that complimentary would be a pretty significant understatement. Finished with the line, "Perhaps I should instead seek a vet." So it was not very complimentary. And I read that poem one night when I was alone and it was quiet. It was late at night, and I was overwhelmed by emotion at reading this poem because I thought I'd really helped her. And I thought, well, what am I going to do with all this emotion that I'm feeling? And I had this thought that sort of led us directly to what we're speaking about now. And the thought was, well, if it was good enough for her to write a poem about me, maybe I could write a poem about her. So not particularly mature, but anyway, it was helpful. So I wrote something, and which was very unusual for me because I haven't really, at that point, I hadn't really written anything since like high school. But I found it very helpful. So it helped me to to release some emotion, and then after the emotion had been released, to discover a surprising place of empathy and compassion, both for her and also for myself. And it was quite a remarkable experience because it went from anger and frustration and disappointment to a place of compassion and empathy. in a relatively short period of time. Like, it would take me a lifetime of meditation to get to that place.
Yeah.
And in about 10 minutes, there it was. And so I thought, well, that's interesting. And I thought if it was helpful for me, maybe it might be helpful for other people. So I started introducing some writing in the teaching work that I was doing, which has been so much fun. And seeing the other people have similar kind of light bulb moments, for want of a better expression, through the experience of writing as a means of deepening compassion and understanding and empathy, particularly around work. And then just for me personally, when I have stories in my head or experiences in my head that just won't leave me alone, often about patients, but not always. I sometimes say to people, it's about when there are the patients that I take home to bed with me, that they're, in a metaphorical sense, disturbing my sleep. I find that if I write something about them, it's helpful, to tell the story. And it's different to the normal case presentation where the doctor tells the story about the patient and it's all in the third person about the patient and the doctor's not in the story.
Yeah.
When I write about the challenging relationships I have with my patients, I include myself in the story. So it's the story's told in the first person and I'm in the story, which is different to a normal way that in medicine we talk about our patients. And I've found by doing that it somehow, when I see that person next time at work, it's changed in some way and it's easier.
Yeah.
By some magic that I can't pretend to understand, things go better. And so once that happened once or twice, and I recognised that things went better, it was very easy to be motivated to do it more because I like to do things that make things easier. Because I'm so lazy, like I'm just lazy and I want things to be easy. So that's sort of the using it for work, but also I know I'm going on. You can interrupt, please.
No, I'm loving it. Please keep going.
Personally, for me, I find the creative process of writing quite freeing and incredibly enjoyable and surprising. The thing that if I had to choose one word, it would be that it's surprising, that I start to write and I might have a bit of an idea of the starting point, and I am time and time again surprised where the pen leads me. And that process I find so enjoyable and also fascinating. Like I'm endlessly fascinated by what happens in that creative process. So I'm in a group, we meet once a week, and we're called the Improvistas. So we do improvisation writing for 2 hours. There's 6 of us, there's usually only 4 of us there, because people are away. And we write 3 or 4 short pieces, just everyone brings a prompt and we write something. It's got nothing to do with medicine. And it's on a Friday afternoon from 2 till 4. And I can't think of a better way to segue from the working week into the weekend.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I love it. And I just love it. And it's fun.
Yeah.
And it's fun and it's helpful. So,
ticks
how good is that?
Yeah, that's the definition of life balance.
That's right.
Yeah, wow, that's fantastic. And obviously you've answered a few of my questions that I had prepared for this interview, which is fantastic. I guess just one thing I really wanted to delve into a bit was something you invited me to be a part of, which is a play that you wrote some time ago, which you've recently, I guess, rejigged or buffed up, or however you want to describe it, and then you've had it performed at an international conference overseas. Do you mind talking a little bit about that and how that's all kind of unfolded?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, this has been also such an exciting journey for me.
Mm.
So I've had in my mind for years this idea of having a look at the long-term relationship that a GP has with a patient uh, through times when the GP knows the patient when they're healthy and well and they come for their regular checks, and then the patient may get a serious illness like cancer, and the GP might be the person who makes that diagnosis and does the initial referrals, and the person has the treatment, and the GP is kind of tangentially involved during that time, and then the person goes into remission, and there's all the anxieties that both the GP and the patient share, and then the patient might get a relapse and the GP can be involved in the palliative care and then aftercare for the family. So I was interested in that story, and also in the difference in language between what's spoken in the visits between the patient and the doctor in comparison to what might be going on in the minds or the hearts of both people.
Yeah.
So I wanted to somehow try and explore that. So I wrote a play that followed that journey between a GP and a female patient who ended up getting breast cancer.
Yeah.
And I wrote the dialogue between the doctor and the patient and the what the doctor would write in the medical record.
Mm.
And then I invited people like yourself from around the world who might have been to some of my workshops, who were mostly medical people with some interest in writing, but not necessarily writers, although there were some writers who were included, and invited them to contribute small short pieces that may be reflective of what was going on either for the patient or for the doctor at a deeper personal level at each stage of that journey. Mm. And I had over 40 people contribute over 100 pieces. Yeah. And sort of put the piece of the jigsaw puzzle together into this play. So the play followed the sequence of the GP and the patient having a conversation, then we'd hear the medical record, the patient's journal, patient's poem, doctor's poem, and then we'd move on to the next consultation. Mm. And it was a complete experiment.
Yeah.
And it was so exciting to see the joy from people like yourself, Sarah, who contributed with such enthusiasm, such beautiful writing. Mm. And then when it got performed in the States, and there was just at the end that beautiful moment of silence because everyone was so focused and just right there, and I looked out at the audience and there were tears. Mm. And then people started clapping and standing up, and like it got a standing ovation. So that was an extraordinary experience for me as a little old regional GP who's not really trained in any of this stuff to bring that to life. So from an idea into fruit was so exciting. Yeah. And I was talking to a young friend of mine yesterday, who's the son of some friends of mine, who is he's doing his master's in drama now, and we were talking about how to rework this with an actual some understanding about how theatre works to make it better. So I'm so excited about the opportunities for.
Oh wow! I mean, and such a cool thing to be learning is at this stage of your career as well. Like, you know, I mean, GP is always interesting, but there can be that monotony to it. So it's such a beautiful new way to expand.
So you've heard a lot from me, Sarah, but I'm really interested because we haven't had a chance to talk about it. What was it like for you to get that email from me with the invitation to participate in the project, and then to be a participant in this sort of international collaborative writing project?
Well, I think at first I was actually quite flattered, I guess, just to have that sort of invitation. And then it really gave me that permission, I guess, just to sit down and write a poem, because something actually that, since I've met you, Hilton, that I've intermittently thought, oh yeah, I should, sit down and do some reflective writing or creative writing. But then often there's not, a real reason to, or there's nothing, that it's not going anywhere, I guess, other than in my journal. So to have something that I had to sort of sit down and have a purpose to my writing, I think really gave me some focus, I suppose. And I get, like you were saying before, I was really quite surprised what ended up on the page. And it makes me think about a little bit, I'm sure you've seen Elizabeth Gilbert's TED Talk about how she, when she was writing her novels, she kind of almost felt like the story came into her, and it wasn't a work of herself. It was sort of divine intervention or something equivalent. And I wouldn't necessarily go as far as saying that. I don't think I could give my work that much kudos, but it definitely it does flow in a way that you don't expect, I suppose. And that was a really interesting and cool experience. So the other thing I really enjoyed was then receiving your feedback and your edits, or your suggested edits, because it was really nice to, I guess, reflect on what I'd written and how it was read, and then with those little tweaks, how it even took on more meaning. So yeah, it was, I found it to be a really useful exercise, just, I guess, reflecting on my own writing, which is something I guess I probably have not really done before ever. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed it, and it's certainly something that remains on my sort of something that I want to keep doing and keep practicing and keep being surprised by, I suppose.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I'll keep you on the list for when we have the next edition of the play. Yes, which will be coming soon.
Yeah,
coming soon.
And hopefully, I know you've been in touch with some people over here in WA. I'd love to have it performed somewhere here in Western Australia, if we can make that happen. So I think, that's something to definitely work towards.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, right. And so I guess just in closing, what's in store for the year ahead, Hilton?
Yeah, good question. I think about this a lot. I'll probably spend more time thinking about what's in store than actually doing the next step. But I definitely want to revise and refine the play, Enduring Witness. I'm thinking about changing it so that perhaps the doctor is a woman and the patient is a man, and just see what difference that makes. So many different varieties. Could do it with the doctor younger than the patient.
Yeah.
Like an older patient with a younger doctor, that would be different to the way it is now. So, yeah, just to play with that. I have just in the last few days thought about a book, and if I put it out there, I'm going to have to do it.
Yes.
Which is kind of like following two doctors, Dr. Goodenough and Dr. Guru, and looking at consulting skills techniques, and looking at what Dr. Goodenough does, and then seeing what Dr. Guru does. And I suppose it will be written in a way that it's questioning the reader to think about what's going on and what they like to do, kind of like what I do in workshops. So translating the interactive question-response approach, like that Socratic method, into the written, or I was even thinking graphic form, like
cartoons almost.
Yeah, cartoons. Yeah. So that's just one of the ideas that's bouncing around at the moment. There'll be something else next week.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. Well, I know someone that runs book writing retreats, so I'll have to send you his details.
That'd be really good. Yeah, that's a really important thing, actually, is having that quarantine time for writing, because it's so easy to do other things, and it's like writing can be the bottom of the list. So I do try and set aside a time every day. I don't always do it in the morning, just for some writing, not usually on a project, but just to help clear my head. So it's almost like a mindfulness activity. Uh, and I do find that helpful. But I have been a few times on retreats where it's just a week of writing, and yeah, that is just such a luxury and so fantastic when there's a clear project in mind.
Yeah,
it's good.
yeah, wonderful. Excellent. Well, I think we'll draw it to a close now, Hilton. Thanks so much for putting aside some time to speak with me this morning. I really enjoyed it, and I'm sure those that have watched the interview will also have really enjoyed it. And what I'll do is I'll pop a link to your website in the show notes, so if people want to learn more about you, or even perhaps enroll in one of your workshops or come and see you speak, then they'll be able to find all of that information there.
Great. Thank you, Sarah.
No, my pleasure. Thank you, Hilton, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, thank you.